The Better Bloke Project is a hate group deliberately putting men's lives in danger. So let's go over the receipts. If you're familiar with the name or with Maddie's face, it's likely because of the backlash they received back in February for teaching men how to fight patriarchal expectations by telling women to shut the f up. And faced with a number of creators pointing out how incredibly harmful this was to both men and women, they took this feedback on board and saw it as an opportunity for growth and to be better blokes. It's in the name. Except of course they didn't, they just doubled down and insisted they said nothing wrong.
Where we encourage women to shut up. Give the blokes a minute to get their thoughts together and get it out if, and only if, you actually want to communicate with them. Now, rough words for delicate ears, maybe.
We're not wrong, you're just too much of a to understand. Which is a ludicrous take from a men's mental health charity, but also a reckless response to being told you're promoting harmful attitudes. So it was to absolutely no one's surprise when a few weeks later they posted this.
Last week, a member posted in our private group and said, "I'm finding it hard to smile and go on. The black dog is real." 3 days later, he took his own life. The comments were full of support, but even with all of that, it wasn't enough. We get multiple posts like this every single week, and we do what we can.
Now, sidestepping the massive problem of using one of your own members taking their life for content, and then failing to redact their name when doing so, we do what we can is a horribly dismissive attitude lacking any accountability or reflection, instead of asking are there serious lessons we could learn from this tragedy, especially since the entire mission of your charity is to educate others on how to prevent the very thing you failed to prevent. It also shows the absolute lack of any formal mental health training, education, or awareness from everyone involved. Because a message like that one should trigger an immediate response to assess whether that person is an imminent danger to themselves or just venting, questions that failed to be asked. Rather than we do what we can, you can hire a trained mental health professional. You can send volunteers through mental first aid education. You can do anything other than what they did do, which was nothing, relying on crowdsourced advice from their community to do the work for them. So let's look at that advice. And I want to be clear, these are all from the comments that Maddie showed on his video that they feel showcase the kind of helpful advice on offer. Get on the carnivore diet, have a coffee. Get a dog or a pet goat. Your sad thoughts will soon drift away. Try improving whatever is the problem. Don't chase happiness. Happiness isn't even a thing. Push through it. Be man enough to walk away from the bad. Only a coward checks out. Chin up and get on with it. None of which is helpful, and the just man up and push through it attitude is detrimental to men's mental health, making men less likely to seek mental health treatment, as pointed out by both the Australian and New Zealand Mental Health Association and the APA's guidelines on boys and men. But not only do they not engage with best practices around helping men with depression, they deliberately call it out as not even part of their focus, despite Maddie stating that they get multiple messages like this every single week. And herein lies the danger. Many of these men's advocacy groups refuse to engage with peer-reviewed research on the topic of self-harm that continually cites the efficacy of emotional regulation and CBT in changing the negative thought patterns and behaviors that are the foundational risk for fatal self-harm in men. Instead, they push a false and damaging narrative that formal therapy options are not effective for men, favoring a peer support approach. But the evidence on the efficacy of peer support is much more clouded. It can be helpful, but there are significant risks. Peer support can increase the risk and trigger self-harm. There's a danger that peers without adequate training will recommend unhealthy strategies, like buying a goat. And participants can end up relying only on peer support, seeing it as an alternative to formal support and treatment rather than as a supplement to professional support. And rather than engage with, understand, or mitigate any of those risks, they once again defended themselves against the backlash trying to educate them to the harm they are doing.
One of the comments, amongst others, was he should try the carnivore diet. Someone on TikTok blew up on that one comment and said that it was damaging, it was not proven to help with radiation and all those things. And I was thinking about it. If a guy has had a lived experience where he, for whatever reason, thinks that helped him, he's got every right to express that. We're not putting it out there as gospel textbook truth, but in a thread of advice from the general population, he's more than welcome to say what works for him. That's the point.
Because research shows it to be actively harmful, Maddie, and refusing to acknowledge that risk when the topic is men's lives is an outlandishly cavalier attitude, especially from a charity dedicated to educating people on taking the topic more seriously. Maybe Start with yourselves, eh? But the other issue with informal male-centered support groups is that without a trained mental health leader to guide and moderate those groups, they can often turn incredibly toxic in a very short space of time, promoting hate and violence. And the Better Bloke Project know this better than anyone, because the original version of the Blokes Advice Facebook group, also run by Better Bloke's Brock Polke, was shut down and banned by Facebook. And do you want to take a wild guess as to why that might be? Because they were actively promoting threats of hate and violence against women, including handing out one woman's contact details and encouraging men to send her unsolicited pictures, as well as memes promoting and excusing men's domestic violence against women. But just 9 months later, Brock relaunched the page, saying that he wasn't going to, quote, let the feminists win, and that he had faith in the group under the correct management. So what does the group look like now, under that correct management? Well, it involves men showing their ass, literally, promoting misogynistic memes. This talk of International Women's Day is all very well, but it isn't going to get the beds made or the ironing done, is it? As well as some casual racism, even more misogynistic memes, jokes making light of alcoholism, as well as substance use, both of which are identified as significant mental health risks for men. So it is wildly inappropriate from a group that claims to take men's mental health very seriously. Now, Rob and Brock are both admins of the Blokes Advice page, but they want people to understand that the Better Bloke Project is a legitimate and serious charity.
No. We aren't a podcast. We are a f***ing charity. This is literally, we've said it so many times, this is a vessel for us to be able to have conversations and try and get the message out of what we're trying to do. We are foremost and solely a charity.
But that legitimacy is a veneer that is exposed the moment you peek at their financials. In 2024, the Better Bloke Project brought in $7,275 Australian dollars in income, of which they paid 5,133 Australian dollars in accounting fees. And if that seems suspiciously high, it is, because what they really mean is that that was a loan repayment. To whom? Great question. To Blokes Advice Limited, the for-profit company they use to run the Facebook group and the merch store that sells misogynistic t-shirts like this. In other words, 71 cents out of every dollar donated to Better Bloke Project goes right back into their own pockets to repay a loan they gave themselves. The entire thing is a grift to push and promote hate speech and right-wing ideology, and you don't have to take my word for it. When Brock relaunched the Blokes Advice Facebook group, he says he did so after consulting with advisors from the One Nation Party, and working with them, influencing policy and offering his support. One Nation is an Australian ultra-nationalist political party that has been labelled a hate group, as their members promote sexism and homophobia. Their leader has called for a blanket ban on Muslim immigration and said Australia is in danger of being swamped by Asians, and that we do not want or need any of these people here. And suddenly in that context, this meme hits a little different. And yet, despite all of this, the group's reckless history of endangering men, failing to take their own mission statement seriously, and continuing to promote misogyny, hatred, and violence against women, women are still reaching out and trying to educate these men, including a number of women who educate on creating social impact professionally, like Tiana, who offered her services for free to help these men. Women are so hopeful and encouraging of building a healthy resource for men that they are desperately trying to reform this toxic grift into something useful and healthy rather than watch it burn itself to the ground. I only wish that Better Bloke Project took men's mental health seriously enough to take their own advice and shut up for a minute and listen to the professionals trying to prevent them from doing more harm.